Hello, Peter.
Hey, George.
All right, so the time has come and we're going to start recording. Hello, Peter. How are you?
As well as you can be in a sub-zero winter day in Russia. I'm fine.
How bad is it today?
It's not the weather. It's not the temperature. It's the we had a snowstorm, very windy, gusty, kind of dreary, I have to say. All I care is sunshine. I don't care how cold it is. Just sun, a little bit of sun that picks me up. But other than that, a typical winter day.
So
I did something for the first time in 20 years. Mm-hmm. This is going to really blow people away. I bought a pair of jeans. I haven't worn jeans for 20 years. And I'm wearing them right now. You know, they're kind of comfortable. Yes. But when you and I bought them, when we were kids, I remember they were as hard as rock. You had to break them in, remember?
Right. Yes. Yeah.
And now these are what they call pre-washed, okay?
Right.
Very comfortable. So
yes.
I don't know why, but I did. And
they're comfortable, and they're also quite warm. I mean, they're warm in the winter. So whereas other things, you know, if you wear a suit, you know, those pants are light. I mean, they don't really warm you. So
I have a very bizarre theory. I bought these at Gap. I went through over the last 3 weeks, seriously, everybody. There's a lot of Gap stores in Moscow. You cannot find beige, off-white, khaki trousers. They're gone.
Really?
And that was a staple for Gap. Now, I wonder if that's like kind of a political thing. Okay, remember the Lincoln Project with the fake torches, and they were all wearing button-down shirts with off-white khaki trousers. I wonder if like Gap said, no, we're not part of the insurrection. No more khakis. I'm serious. Anybody watching this in your store? Do they have that color? They have the blue. They have the black, and they even have advertising that style of trouser, but they don't have it in that color.
Well, that's interesting. I hadn't really thought about that, but that's interesting. I mean, those beige khaki trousers, I mean, they're kind of old-fashioned. I mean, it's the way
they go with everything.
They go with everything, but it old-fashioned. I mean, there was always the particular waspy look. You know, you would be wearing a kind of a dark blue blazer, and then you would have these beige pants.
Exactly.
Right? You know, Tucker Carlson always wears that. You know, he knows that. You know, whenever he does these does his talks, and you see him, he's always wearing that blue blazer, and it's like a museum piece from some era 30, 40 years ago.
But that color, you can wear anything with it.
Yeah,
and you can wear it in the winter, and you can wear it in the summer.
Right.
That's why I like them.
Right. Yeah. No, that's. That's interesting. I mean, I was just thinking of the James Bond movies of the 70s when Roger Moore took over the franchise from Sean Connery. That was his customary way that he was dressed. He would always be wearing that blue blazer, usually double-breasted, and the khaki pants. It was a 1970s look. I mean, that was if you look at films from the 1970s, that's how people had. You know, they had the long hair, the sideburns, and then the blazer and the khaki pants.
And very often, unfortunately, mustaches. Remember that?
And mustaches. Yeah. That's right. The mustaches. Yeah, very, very much so. Yeah. Absolutely.
They had that Netflix series Narcos, and it was in the 70s and early 80s. And they all had mustaches, and of course the sideburns. Okay.
And that's right. I don't remember. I think there was some movie from the 70s with Gene Hackman where he also had this big mustache. It didn't really suit him very much. You know, you kind of think of him as Popeye Doyle, but
one of my favorite actors. You know,
you
know why he stopped acting?
I think he couldn't remember his lines.
No, he said he wouldn't play old men.
Oh, is that right? But he'd done it before. I mean, as he got
Runaway Jury, I think, was one of his last big ones, and he was awesome in it. Awesome.
Right. Yeah. No, even
pulled up Dustin Hoffman a bit. Okay.
Yeah. No. He's
Dustin
always,
Hoffman, it was one of his best roles for an actor that I always had a weird feeling about, okay?
yes.
But in Runaway Jury, I mean, it was awesome. Do you know that they had finished the film and Dustin Hoffman and Gene Hackman had never interacted in the film?
Oh, really?
So when the film was in post-production, they said, we need a scene where you guys interact, and they did it in the men's room.
Right, that's right. That's that one scene in the men's room. Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
So Dustin Hoffman, he finally did something, you know, Midnight Cowboy, but that was like eons ago, okay?
He wasn't really that great in that. We just remember him from that line, "I'm walking here," which has now become a kind of an iconic thing. Hey, I'm walking here.
But it was John Voight that made the film. Yeah, people got it wrong, okay?
Yeah, exactly.
He starred in it, but John Voight carried it. And if anybody, I'm a huge John Voight fan. If you really want to see him, and I mean, at the top of his game, watch Ray Donovan, because he's amazing in it. He is amazing in that series. And plus, since I'm mentioning it, I went through 4, maybe 5 seasons, and George and I talked, I don't know if you finished it, I did. It was getting a bit thin. I agree, okay? And so what they did was they ended the series, and this month, they're having a feature-length film to tie up all of the loose ends. So I'm looking forward to that.
Oh, there's going to be a feature-length film?
Yeah, to tie up all the loose ends that we were left with.
Oh, is that right? Okay, so it's finished.
It's done. It's done. It's coming out at the very end of I think the 20. Netflix is launching a lot of stuff on the 25th. Ozarks, a number of things. Okay, Peaky Blinders. So.
Right. But the series itself, the HBO Showtime, that's gone. That's finished. Okay. Yeah, I didn't know. I guess I didn't. I felt that. I think I watched the first 2 seasons, maybe 3 seasons. I can't remember. I felt that they were all kind of the same. I mean, it was like, you know, this is just like the other. You know, all gets very complicated. You know, the story itself is very good, but then it's all a bit unlikely the way, you know, Donovan kind of resolves all the crises.
What I think that one of the things that made it thin gruel at one point, because he was a Hollywood fixer, and they kind of moved further and further away from that. I think that's what kind of thinned out the scripts, because the first 2 seasons it was all about a Hollywood fixer, which I believe, you know, I don't believe one person was involved in such things, but I mean, I believe every single scenario was very possible. Okay, so that's why I liked it. That's why I like.
No, I get the impression that that's the sort of thing that happened. I mean, you know, you whenever you read these stories in Hollywood, scandals, and then you kind of think, how the hell did that scandal go away? I mean, you know, every time you read about, oh, this actress committed suicide, you know, now I'm always convinced, no, this actress didn't commit suicide. This actress was murdered, and some fixer came in and somehow, you know, made it all look like suicide, and the police, and naturally they didn't want to cause any embarrassment to the studio, and they went along with it. Yep, suicide. It just always seems unlikely, you know, hey, why, you know, people who are at the top of their game, making a lot of money, you know, they're glamorous, you know, and then they commit suicide. I mean, I know it happens, but it always seems unlikely. There seems to be an awful lot of actresses who commit suicide in Hollywood.
Well, apropos, one has to wonder, bring us up to date here, one has to wonder, are such fixers involved in the Baldwin Rust movie?
Right. I'm sure that's right. I'm absolutely sure that's right. Yeah, no, that's right. I mean, I get, and they probably came up with that story. The one, you know, it took them a little bit of time before they came up with the story that he didn't actually pull the trigger. He just pulled the hammer back, and then the gun just went off. It seems unlikely to me, but it sounds like somebody worked on this story because it was a long time before they came up with it.
And that's why I liked the first few seasons, because it seemed extremely plausible, just like you were saying. I mean, when you get the first version, a public version, it's kind of weird, and then you see, oh, this is how you fix things. Okay, right. So but again, before we finish off with this, John Voight is just miraculous in it, and he plays a primary role in the final feature film that will tie up all the loose ends. So John Voight, and you know, he's someone of enormous courage. I mean, he's a conservative in Hollywood, and here's a guy that, Midnight Cowboy. I mean, that was like eons ago, and he's still at the top of his game. Okay, pretty hard to knock a guy down like that.
No, that I quite agree. And so there's Elvis makes the point, apropos of what we were talking about, the suicides, which is Natalie Wood. Yeah, I never bought into the story of the official story of Natalie Wood. She's there on this boat with her husband Robert Wagner, and then
who was the other big actor?
Christopher Walken. And
I see nothing, I hear nothing. I mean, the Sergeant Schultz routine. Come on, guys.
Right. And there, the cover-up wasn't very successful because they kept reopening that case because obviously they weren't really very convinced by the official story. So they kept opening it up. And so, but all the rest, like, Jean Harlow and Marilyn Monroe. Oh, she's having sex with both the Kennedys, and then lo and behold, she commits suicide. Yeah, okay, I'm buying it. So it's so that's why it was the Hollywood studio is a big, powerful industry in Los Angeles. So they can really lean on the police and the prosecutors. Hey, we don't want any scandal here because that's going to be hugely embarrassing. And suicide. We're happy.
Yeah, well, everybody has to keep in mind, maybe not so much today with the power of the internet and Netflix and things like this, but I mean, in an earlier age, I mean, these major production companies, they were the biggest taxpayer in the county. You got to keep your tax base happy.
Yes, that's exactly
tourism, all these other things. Okay, so I mean, my first real job was at Disneyland. When I was 18 years old, I worked at Disneyland in a division called cash control. So this is a time with checks and cash. And so they needed a cadre of people to actually count the receipts at the end of the night. So I worked at night counting hundreds of thousands of dollars, okay? And the relationship between Disneyland security and Anaheim police, that city where Disneyland is, it was like that, George.
Yeah, no, that's so right. So we got Gary Proctor says Dr. David Kelly. I think it's apropos of the suicide. The film's a bit late coming, like they even could use a Gene Hackman. So yeah, I wrote the Dr. Kelly thing again. Suicide. So he's got he has something inconvenient to say, and then suicide. But the strange thing is there are so many of these kinds of suicides that happen in the West, and everyone buys into it. Now imagine if this was Russia and some Dr. David Kelly type, suicide, everyone's happy, we're all, no questions asked.
I'm trying to remember, there was a famous economist of the 1990s. He was part of the marketization of the Russian economy, the Walken, but it was.
Yeah, I know who you mean. Is that the guy?
Therapy. He was one of the shock therapy.
Was he that guy at Harvard? With
No. I'm thinking of a Russian guy, and so
Russian guy. Okay.
And he kind of, because of his economic theories and all that, he kind of fell out with the new powers that be. I mean, he wasn't an enemy of the Kremlin or nothing like that, but he was in the UK or Ireland, and he got food sickness. And, another poisoning, and he desperately said, "Take me home to Moscow. I want to see my doctor." So I mean, they couldn't. No, you're protected here. You can stay here. No, I want to go home. I have food poisoning. And he got back home. They bumped his stomach. He had food poisoning. It's okay.
Right. But you remember there was that guy who wrote the book about George W. Bush. I think it was called Favored Son. And he said that basically George W. Bush had been caught dead to rights with cocaine. And then the case was thrown out because his father, obviously a very powerful figure, got it thrown out. And then he committed suicide. Whoa, he committed suicide. Okay, everyone's happy.
Hastings, right?
That's another one. That's another guy. He was the one who also wrote the expose about the generals, the Afghanistan generals. And then it was a car crash.
Somehow that tree got in front of his car. Amazing.
Right. Exactly. That was another case. And then of course there was Gary Webb, who wrote about the CIA and the cocaine connection. the CIA, the Contras, and the importation of crack cocaine into the United States, he too committed suicide.
Well, remember defenestration? Remember that? With defenestration, everyone, is that you die jumping out of a one-story building. Okay.
Right. Yes.
Okay. When the communization of Eastern Europe, in almost all of these countries, there was an indigenous communist party. But when the Red Army came in, they brought the fellow travelers like the Czechs, the Slovaks, the Poles, and they said, no, these are our guys because they've been in the Soviet Union. Yep. And so it was particularly in Prague, a number of prominent indigenous Czech communists suddenly died jumping out of a first-story building.
Well, of course, the most famous case in Prague was, of course, Jan Masaryk, who was the son of
the son of the father,
the Thomas Masaryk, who was the founder of Czechoslovakia. So again, he committed suicide, jumped out of the window.
See, you guys, no matter what topic you throw at us, George and I go back to our core knowledge points, okay? We went from Ray Donovan to the founder of the Czechoslovakian. Who else can do that on the internet? Who else?
Exactly. No, that's right. Yeah. But again, it is sort of interesting how, it's that kind of media narratives, whereby I don't know how many times you watch any of these TV shows, and it'll always look at all these Russians who got killed over the years, and apparently they were all killed by Putin, and then and there's always that assumption: anyone at all who dies an unnatural death, suicide, car crash, obviously Putin had them killed. And you say, well, you can draw up a list very quickly of people in the West who had very uncomfortable things to say, who then suddenly, lo and behold, within a year or two, die an unnatural death. No one ever questions that. And if you were to question it, that's a conspiracy theory, it's a conspiracy, so you write a book about the president of the United States that basically there was a cocaine charge that was thrown out because of his father, and then you suddenly commit suicide. Does look a little suspicious.
That's right. Always, who benefits when we have one of these quote unquote suicides? George is absolutely right. Politovskaya, for example. She was a journalist, and she was a scathing critic of Putin and the Kremlin. Yeah. But her reach was very limited to a very small group of people that are disposed that way, and that's fine. And who benefited from her death? It wasn't Vladimir Putin, that's for sure. Okay. Right. And so many other ones as well. So
the most famous case, of course, is that the famous Russian politician who was assassinated.
Yes, the very memorable, the person that is easy to forget. What's his name? It'll come to me. Oh, come on.
Anyone?
Yeah, anyone. I mean, he had
one of the Gaggle, remember.
Ukrainian girlfriend was there, and they was on the flight out the next morning. Right. Oh God, I feel so stupid.
Yeah, I know, but it's terrible. I mean, I can see him now. I can see his face now. But yeah, he was shot. Was very close to the Kremlin. And again, obviously Putin did this. And again, how does he benefit from this? Well, there's no way that he benefits from.
Okay, but George, we're proving a point right now. Is that he wasn't memorable? Okay.
No.
I mean, and a number of people, when it happened, people said, "I thought he had immigrated. I thought he was dead."
Right. Yeah. No. Exactly. That's exactly right. But the one was interesting was again in Serbia. It was again, I can't remember exactly his name. This was a former Yugoslav communist leader who had been Milosevic's mentor, but was going to be, just basically had faded out. And then just before the 2000 election, he was killed. Again, the killer's unknown. And naturally, Milosevic had him killed. But it never made any sense, because even if this has been, because he went back to the communist era, had any intention of jumping into the presidential race, it would have served Milosevic's interest, because then the opposition vote would have been split. The only cui bono, It was the West. The West was determined to get Milosevic out, and they didn't want the opposition vote split. so he had no interest. I mean, it's a common sense point. It was the opposite of what Milosevic would have wanted. And it was obviously him who had killed him. So none of this ever makes any sense. But the media always run with the story that, oh yeah, the guy we don't like, he had him killed. Well, no explanation of how he could possibly serve his interest.
The West never takes any interest in Ukrainian journalists that are killed.
Right.
Okay?
Yeah.
And there've been many. All right.
Right.
But they never take any interest in that. Okay.
Right.
If it doesn't serve their purposes, they don't care. I mean, that's actually the case in the United States. Look at all the young Black people that are killed in Chicago every single week, and who takes notice? No political purpose.
Yes, that's right. It's very interesting. I mean, again, kind of linked to that is that the media today running with the allegation made by U.S. officials that the Russians might stage some kind of a provocative false flag incident in order to trigger Russian intervention. So, this was something our Russians were saying about 10 days ago. That they thought the Ukrainians and obviously their American sponsors were going to stage some kind of an incident, maybe a chemical attack. When the Russians made this allegation, the media completely dismissed it. Putin, I think Shoigu who had said this. Shoigu, he said this without evidence. They're all used to saying this without evidence. They got used to it with Trump. Trump said this without evidence. But apparently, when U.S. officials say it, we don't need any evidence. No one said, well, U.S. officials said this without evidence. And this was actually said by Jake Sullivan. So, but no, he doesn't need it. I don't need no stinking evidence. So I can just say it. And the media buy it.
Yeah, I mean, chemical weapons, I wouldn't be surprised, okay? They seem to have this kind of predilection for chemical attacks.
Just Boris Nemtsov was the name.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you so much, Ryan Moore. That's the one, Nemtsov.
You've wiped the shame from our brows.
Exactly, but he's a nondescript figure, and even the name Nemtsov is not exactly. But that's right. Yeah, go on. What you were saying.
Nemtsov. Again, what purpose it serves here? I mean, everyone, Russia might stage a false flag. I mean, does that sound like weapons of mass destruction to you? Where are the weapons here? I mean, this is the way it was described to me. When this is a provocation of a provocation, okay?
Yeah.
But it backs up what George and I've been saying all along. As a matter of fact, I was going to save it. I was going to save it for tomorrow for thumbs up and thumbs down, but I'm going to say it now because I'm very proud of us. A preview to thumbs up, thumbs down. Thumbs up to the Gaggle. George and I, we said early on, and I'm going to change this topic a little bit, is January 6th. And what did you and I say? That, they're going to keep people in prison as long as they can into solitary confinement, and then they're going to find one or two to say, sedition! And they have found one or charged one.
Right.
70-year-old man, full disability,
right.
A veteran, uses a cane to walk. And he is literally the commander. And George and I prophesized this, and more or less we more or less got the circumstances right. I think Tucker Carlson is right. They needed to find some scapegoat for the insurrection because nobody's being charged with it. Okay,
but I think it's an excellent point. But what's interesting about this is this trial can, of course, be delayed indefinitely. It doesn't mean that they're going to hold the trial tomorrow because they're not ready to go to trial. And it is very, very unlikely they're going to prove this. I mean, it is extremely hard to prove sedition, but they don't really care about proving it. They just know, hey, we've got the charge, because everybody has been jeering at the DOJ. Hey, you keep talking about insurrection and sedition. How come you're only charging people with parading and trespass? Or obstruction of an official proceeding, whatever the hell that means. And so finally they said, right, that's it. We're going to go ahead with decision. But, okay, prove it. Go to court and prove it. Well, we'll cross that bridge when we come to it, because they don't have any evidence. That guy wasn't involved in any goddamn sedition. I mean, just look at him. I mean, it's laughable.
But what they're doing, it's a pure folly. They're putting late boomers, retirees, on trial. I mean, wow. I
Right.
mean, it's breathtaking.
Right.
It's
Right.
breathtaking.
Right.
And
Right.
then what about the pipe bomber, George?
Yeah, that was another thing.
All
Yeah,
this
the pipe bomber.
technology,
Yes.
all
Yes.
this technology, and they
Right.
can't,
Right.
and they keep, they keep giving them more and more money to do, more extensive investigation, and they can't find out who this is. Matter of fact, very few people even mention it. As a matter of fact, I think most people have forgotten about it.
Right. Right. Yeah. No, that's right. Anyway, we have a question here. So first, before that, we have Janet Kostretsky said, apropos of my not remembering this Serbian communist leader who was Milosevic's mentor. His name was Stambolic. Again, this is what comes when you get old. Names are what you lose. Those are the ones that's what you lose first. You can't remember the names. You can see the face, but you can't remember the name.
Oh no, I'll tell you how it works. Is that on some days you can remember some people that sat next to you when you were in second grade.
Yeah.
And
well,
then you don't remember what time what you had for breakfast yesterday. That's what's awful. That's what's awful. Okay.
That is a little bit.
The memories, I have memories, crystal clear memories when I was 5 or 6.
Yes,
but
absolutely.
who was on Crosstalk last week? I don't remember.
No, that's right. But names are I find very difficult, to remember. Names of people that I know very well. It's like personally know very well, and I can't remember his name.
Well, Boris Nemtsov, shame on me.
Right, but anyway, but Janet, you're absolutely right. Ivan Stambolic. So, and then he suddenly dies, and Milosevic was blamed. That a political has-been who had been a has-been for I think at least 2 decades. Why Milosevic wanted him dead never made any sense. But whoever dies, it was always down to the guy that you don't like. And then we have a super chat from Jonathan. Thank you so much, Jonathan. Nice to see you again. And he says January the 6th will be viewed in decades to come, similar to the Japanese internment camps. I mean, I think you mean that it'll become a kind of a horror story, one of the in the litany of horrors perpetrated by the United States.
I think that's true.
I think that's right. So it's like the Japanese internment camp, January. I mean, it's already being made that the mythical story with that it's like 9/11, Pearl Harbor. Totally ridiculous. But as long as you can keep repeating the story, ultimately you just bang it into people's heads because people just they give up. That's what happens. That's why it's effective just to keep hitting because then people give up. Okay, well, all right.
I mean,
I surrender.
It's interesting because there's been some focus groups done on this, and again, Fox News is a source, so take that into consideration. But it was quite interesting. I mean, there was a cold question. I mean, how do you feel about January 6th? And people said, what's that? Okay. I mean, George and I are slightly different on this one here because I just think, you repeat it so much. It's like, are fish aware of water? Okay. I mean, people are aware of inflation, and the supply chain thing, and why the shelves are empty, and why in the world is Joe Biden comparing me to Jefferson Davis? What's that all about?
Right,
okay.
Right.
I tend to think.
I agree with that in the short term. In the short term, what you're saying is true. In the long term, I think it will have an effect. In the long term, people will accept the falsehood that Russia interfered in the 2016 election to secure the victory for Donald Trump. People accept it eventually. They may not accept it today, but they will.
No, on that one, I agree with you. Okay, January 6th, that remains to be seen. The reason why I say, just kind of a personal thing here. Right before George and I do this, I have a Zoom call with one of my graduate student friends, which will remain nameless here. And we talk about what's going on in the news. And George is absolutely right, is that, I mean, he never bought into the Russiagate thing, but he has his deep suspicions because he's in the category, and he's a good person, good faith person, not a partisan, not at all. Okay. But they just didn't look deep enough. Okay. And I kind of just, I didn't push back. What's the point? My point here with George is, and all of you gagglers, is that George is right in the sense that seed is planted and it germinates. Okay, they may not say, "Oh, well, that they absolutely proved it," but they'll always, "Oh, you know, it's like the Kennedy assassination." And it's like, you know, they just there's something there, kind of screwy, you know, not resolved. Okay,
Yes.
but I agree with you. On January 6th, I think remains to be seen.
But I mean, another example of that is, say, Watergate. Now, as you said, you know, a long time ago, I think it was on Crosstalk, and you said Watergate was really about the cover-up. And what you just said is that was, you're absolutely right. That's all that was, all that mattered in Watergate was the cover-up. But instead, it's this acquired, this mythical allure, you know, Nixon was doing all these evil things, spying on, you know, running. No, it was that cover-up. He got caught. He shouldn't have, because he's a lawyer. He was a trained lawyer, and so he should have known where he was getting into legal jeopardy. But that's it. It was nonsensical. But he got himself involved in covering it up.
And George and I part with a lot of people on this here, but Richard Nixon was a great president, and it was
Absolutely.
a great presidency. Okay,
yeah, that's right.
But liberal historians write the history. Okay, and Richard Nixon got the short end of the stick because it was he got the biggest landslide since FDR, and only Ronald Reagan
bigger than
equaled
FDR. Yeah, 49 states. It was bigger.
And only Ronald Reagan equaled it. Okay,
yeah, exactly. That's exactly right. So there was an interesting question a little bit earlier by our friend Herman Montoya, who said that Aaron Maté interviewed Douglas McGregor about the situation with Russia and Ukraine. McGregor agreed with Schiff that Russia will invade Ukraine. I don't know, Peter, did you watch this?
I didn't see it, but I think I know what he's getting at, and I would take he's over the target, okay, but he's phrasing it the wrong way. Russia has no intention of invading. Invading means you want to take territory. Russia's not interested in taking any territory at all, okay? However, I have said, and this is my own personal opinion, I only speak for myself, is that I've repeatedly said, and I'll say it again, if Russia believes that there are missile systems, weapon systems that pose an existential threat to their sovereignty, they will take them out. That you don't have to invade to do that.
Yeah, no, that's what I assumed that that McGregor told Aaron Maté, because McGregor is certainly no crazy Russophobe or anything like that. But I'm assuming that that's a circumstance, and I think also if Ukraine mounts some kind of an offensive and crosses the line of separation and tries to conquer the Donbass by force, again that would trigger Russian intervention. But these would be very limited interventions, very limited goals for Russia. They don't have any intention of invading, because it's what we were saying yesterday, because the only reason for an invasion is if you're going to do a regime change, and Russia has no interest in any regime change. The clowns at Kiev want to stay in power. They'll leave them in power, but there's no. And whereas in '56 when they invaded Hungary, and then in '68 in Czechoslovakia, that was regime change. They needed to remove Nod and they needed to remove Dubček, because then they saw both as threats. But in this case, they don't even see them as a threat, but they do see it as limit. In terms of they are limited issues that Russia can address, and that's why not really a proper invasion.
No, and Russia wouldn't benefit from it. It doesn't want to do it. Look, everybody, if Russia wanted to do that, it could have done it a long, long time ago. I mean, and it didn't. And as a matter of fact, when the two provinces that make up the Donbass, when they were pleading on their hands and knees, we're going to have a referendum, we want to join Russia, Putin said no. Right. Don't do it.
Exactly. That's exactly right. That's exactly right. So we have a super chat from our good friend Detroit Rock City, and it says, as always, thank you for a great program. Thank you so much, Detroit. Very, very much appreciate those kind words. And then hey man, that's the name. Hey man says Russia's back, just exposing the fact that NATO is a tributary system. And the US will never fight Russia on behalf of anyone except maybe UK, Germany, and France. Everyone else's NATO status means nothing. I mean, I think that is right. I mean, again, is something we've talked about, that, you know, all these countries have been corralled into NATO on this sort of ludicrous assumption that, you know, NATO is ready to go to war on behalf of these countries. So these was completely frivolous guarantees that were issued to, you know, half a dozen new states, and you know, and then they were never plausible. They were never plausible. You're ready to trigger a nuclear. Remember, back in the Cold War, no one would even believe that the Americans are going to start a nuclear war for Bonn and Dusseldorf. That was the cliche. And they're not going to destroy New York and Washington for Bonn and Dusseldorf. Now we're asking, yeah, they're going to destroy New York and Washington for Tallinn and Vilnius. I don't see it.
Well, George is absolutely right. And this is, you see NATO, it's projecting its fears all of the time. I mean, it's really quite transparent if you look at it the right way. It's always been, pick your Baltic Republic, George, pick whatever your favorite one is. It's pick Estonia, okay? Right. Well, the Russians want to take Estonia. Well, see, the reason why people in NATO will make that ridiculous claim is that they know, and it's their neurosis that they worry about, is that of course nobody in Europe is going to fight for Estonia. They know it. Where is that place, okay? Nobody is going to fight for it, all right? And Russia doesn't want it. I mean, as an economist pointed out to me, even the young people of Estonia don't want Estonia. They're all leaving because they have a neoliberal economic model that doesn't demonstrate growth. It demonstrates growth for the usual suspects, the 1%, but not for the working class until they leave. Okay, so this is NATO projecting its neurosis because they know that no one wants to fight for Ukraine, because not even a member of NATO, but even a NATO member itself, there's no will to mobilize forces to. I mean, where does it stop, George? What are you going to do? What are you I mean, NATO, its conventional arsenal is pitiful. Okay, it's pitiful.
Yeah, because
so are we going to go nuclear right away? Huh?
That's right. You know, because that's all you can do. Because that's the whole point of when you issue these ridiculous guarantees. That, well, what are you, in practical terms, what are you actually going to do? You know, if you know the Russians take Estonia, I mean, they don't want it, but if they were to take it, how are you gonna? What are you gonna? You're in no position to do anything. So it becomes an immediate escalation. And once you escalate, boom, that is going to be very, very hard to stop, you know, escalating to the level of nuclear weapons. I mean, so it's nuts. It was always a ridiculous bluff. It was, you know, just assumed, hey, Russia was just always going to accept it. Russia would always be weak and would just simply accept it. And that's now, we know, you know, they don't know how to respond to this because Russia is not weak anymore. They still think we're back in 1997. And so they still come mouthing these same cliches because those are the cliches of 1997.
So everybody, let's take a look at a scenario. Washington continues its bluff. The Russians won't do anything. They're weak. Putin is afraid of losing power, whatever the garbage narrative you want. And let's say the US puts in offensive missiles that Russia defines as being offensive, and they put them on the line of contact. They'll probably be taken out, okay? So what do you think Estonia, Latvia, and Lithuania are gonna do? You think, send us some missiles too? No, of course not. We don't wanna be a target.
That's right.
See, that's the logic of it. See, Stoltenberg is a raving idiot, okay? Because nobody wants to be the target. And that's why they're playing this ridiculous theater with Ukraine. Well, at least that's not a NATO country, okay? Let the Ukrainians, you know, suffer for it, okay? So, you know, NATO is not taking any chances in this sense. But I mean, if they want to push and see, well, let's see what happens, okay? They're going to get a cold awakening. And none of those countries on the border are going to say, oh yeah, send us those missiles. We want them next. No way.
That's an excellent point. Because it's like, yeah, you know, well, fine, you know, we'll give you missiles, and essentially, yeah, that means they become targets, and that's the sort of absurdity of it all. But in a way, that's the cynical game that the Americans are playing. I mean, it says, you know, okay, fine, you know, you take on all of the risks, Because for them this is great. I mean, they get Ukraine and Georgia. They get the one. They're the ones who get thumped, not the United States. So Americans think, hey, this is okay. So if these countries want to be in NATO, okay, then they are essentially in the front line, and they're going to get hammered. It's clear, should be clear to Ukraine, should be clear to Georgia, that NATO is not going to go to war with Russia on your behalf. So all of this talk, everyone can join NATO and NATO, they're not going to go to war for your behalf. So your membership of NATO will be completely devoid of any meaning.
The Donbass left because it was experiencing what I think is fair to say, ethnic cleansing, okay? They left. Crimea left. What did NATO do, George? Right. They thumped the table, right, okay?
Right. Yes.
That's what they did. So, what did they, there's a paper tiger. Look, there's different points of view on this, and George and I are going to up our game on it. But the more I look at it, all of these, sanctions, overpowering, deadly, lethal sanctions. The more you look at these things, they hurt Europe more than they hurt Russia.
Right. That's
and just because George and I are born cynics, take a look at what is going on with the Department of Energy, the Department of State, Department of Treasury, and companies, large liquefied natural gas companies in the United States. They're already trying to muscle in. Yeah. They're trying to muscle in on the European market. There is obviously a commercial element to all of this here. All right, because that's exactly what they want. They want to push Russia's energy interest in Europe out, and the Americans will replace it with very, very pricey, I would point out, liquefied natural gas. It's a lot more expensive than getting it out of a pipeline.
Yeah, it really is. But this is the problem with Europe, because it should have been obvious to the Europeans that the Americans are being extremely self-interested. All of America's policies in Europe has been self-interested, and in which the Europeans have to pick up the costs. I mean, you stir up trouble between Ukraine and Russia. Goody, we did this. But Ukraine make a problem for the Europeans, because now you've got all this immigrant flow, and then into Europe, and as you say, now you've got this the energy problem, and the Germans are in trouble. They need the natural gas. Germans thought, hey, this is very clever. We're going to go around Ukraine under the sea, and we're not going to have to worry about any of that. Well, the Americans weren't going to buy that. No, you're not going to play that little game. And so Europeans should have stood up to the United States long ago and said, any conflict on the European continent is going to be harmful to us. For the Americans, this is great. It's good news for them, but it's harmful to us. But then, they just don't, confront the United States. That's they should have done.
George, in December, the Russians sent NATO a document that would be what they would like to see as a legally binding agreement to treaty. The Russians also sent Washington a document that they would like to see a legally binding agreement to treaty. They didn't send one to the EU, did they, George?
No.
Why? Because it doesn't count.
Doesn't. No. That's right. But this is what they always do. They're always trying to be too clever by half. So that great English expression, we'll try to outdo all this little maneuvering, and then we're gonna get, like Olaf Scholz, I'll sideline my foreign minister, Annalena Baerbock. I'm going to take over personally take responsibility for relations with Russia. Nord Stream 2 is to be kept separate from Ukraine and politics. And in the meantime, I'm going to go to Washington and tell them that everything is great. I'm with you. NATO's stronger than ever. You can't play this little game, because the Americans aren't going to buy into it. I mean, we're not buying it. And and that was even Trump's point. I mean, that was Trump's one. Hey, you want NATO? Fine, we'll give you NATO. You do what we want. And that's it. You know, you don't play your own little game.
So you can hear it here first, maybe. If I think a conflict of some sort is in the cards, very much so, unfortunately, okay? Because the West doesn't want to listen. We had a whole week of just word salad from low octane people, B-listers from the past. Again, I'll use the example. A missile system is put onto the line of contact, the separation point, it's taken out. George, what's going to happen? You're going to get hell. The Europeans are going to lose it. They're going to lose it, and they're going to say, what are we doing? Okay. And what is Stoltenberg? What about all your vaunted unity? You idiot. It's going to crumble. It's going to flow through your fingers like sand.
Right.
Because people are going to say, what are you talking about? A war in Europe?
Yes.
What? Why?
That's right. And in fact, the person who has actually said that explicitly, war in Europe is the worst possible thing, has been Viktor Orban in Hungary. He said, this is really, really bad news for countries in Central Europe and Eastern Europe, because when there's a conflict between East and West, we are the ones who get trampled on. So, we need to do everything to prevent a conflict between East and West. It's unfortunate that that most of the European leaders are just too craven to say something that they obviously agree with. I mean, they all say, yeah. I mean, when you're a Czech, you kind of remember, what happens when you're a Czech, when East and West come into conflict. And so, but that's it. But but the Americans, hey, this is good for us. So it's an awful policy, but it is pushed by the United States. And for Victoria Nuland and Blinken to say, oh, we're all united, the absolute unity. There's no unity. There's no damn unity. But this is just simply as they say, word salad. The Americans say, oh yeah, we're all united. You are not united. It's just all, and it's come about because of this this ridiculous insistence of antagonizing Russia when there was no need to do so. There was no need to do so. You started doing it in the 90s, and it's gone into overdrive in the last 7 years or 8 years now since Maidan.
Well, let's do a little bit of history real quick. Look at the Treaty of Versailles of 1919, the establishment of Eastern European states. What did the Western powers created them along with the United States? What security guarantees do they have? Oh, just words. Oh, yeah, we'll be there. Don't worry. Okay. Right. What happened, George? Starting about 1938. Okay.
But even earlier. I mean, even
earlier. Okay.
Yeah. But
where were those guarantees? There were none. They were done above you. Okay. Look at the aftermath of the Second World War. All of their words. Right. Stalin said, "How many divisions does the Pope have?" Okay, he doesn't.
Right.
And again, if there's a conflict and completely unreasonable, unnecessary, so I say to my Polish friends, what's going to change the course of history? We got a pattern here. Right. We got a pattern.
Right. No, that's exactly right. But when I said it was even earlier, because remember when the Treaty of Locarno was signed, which is 1925. Yep. What was distinctive about the Treaty of Locarno is that everyone guaranteed the Western borders. The Eastern borders were left.
Right. Absolutely.
And then, smart people like Hitler, they said, there's no guarantees. No one has guaranteed the Eastern borders. They're still up for grabs. So once that happened, was, they were empty words because nobody was prepared to go to war to start guaranteeing these Eastern borders.
And then when war started, what did they do? Everyone, it was famously called the phony war.
That's right. That's exactly right. Anyway, we have a very nice super chat from Hey Man. I like that name, Hey Man. And it says, been watching Crosstalk since the early 2010s. Cheers. So, okay, well, that's very nice. Thank you. And then we have a question from Maxim Pehunkov, who says, have you guys read Pepe Escobar's latest pieces on Russia? You guys should invite him on the show. he's on fire. Have you read this, his latest?
I see Pepe on Zero Hedge very often.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
He's very creative. I'll give him that. He's very creative. He has an inordinate interest in China and China's view of the world. But his critique of the quote unquote new Cold War, I don't have any major disagreements with him.
Mm-hmm. Okay. No, that's right. So, but and then here's some comments here from Janet Kostrevsky. Something we've talked about before. We have Pyatt here in Greece, and said, yeah, and he keeps retweeting her ridiculous tweets. I'm assuming. Let me just see who the her is. I'm assuming the her is Victoria Newland, since the subject of Newland had come up. So yeah, well, Pyatt and Newland, of course, go way back to.
Way back.
Yeah. And then we have Herman Montoya, who says Viktor Orban is pro-NATO, but wants to receive cheap Russian natural gas. Doesn't make any sense. Well, I don't know whether it doesn't make any sense. I mean, I think that Orban, and I think it's something we've talked about before, that Orban wants to maintain leverage. He needs room in which to maneuver. He knows the EU and the United States, have got a target on his back. I mean, they want him gone. I mean, they hate him. They want him gone. His good relations with Russia. I mean, really good relations. I mean, he visits Moscow, and Moscow officials come to Budapest. They sign all these trade deals, business deals. It means he has leverage against them. So whatever economic sanctions the EU mounts against him, and they've already now done it fairly explicitly. He's always got someone else to go to. And again, same with China. He's got his hands in the till in China. So that gives him leverage, something that the Poles don't have. I mean, if you don't have good relations with Russia, you're not in a good position to fight the EU.
Yeah, but George, as you pointed out so many times, is that he's working to the benefit of his people, the people that voted for him.
The people that vote, exactly. And his foreign policy is popular in Hungary. I mean, there's definitely no love lost here for the communists, but trade business deal. I mean, hey, if you can get some money, cheap energy into Hungary, they're all for it. So I haven't heard anyone attack him for that. I mean, obviously, other than opportunistic politicians, he's the opposition. They attack him for his deals with Russia. But ordinary Hungarians, the ones I've come across, they all seem perfectly happy with his foreign policy. So yeah, because hey, they benefit. I mean, why would anyone be unhappy with business deals that put money into their pockets or makes them warm in the winter?
Yeah, well, the Germans seem to be schizophrenic about it. They're the ones that wanted the Nord Stream 2. They got it. The Russians built it. And now you equivocate. Okay. Right. Again, this is an overriding theme that George and I constantly return to. If you say something, can you be trusted? I mean, this was $1 billion project, okay? And then you get cold feet at the very end. I mean, why should another pipeline to Europe ever be built again? Why?
Not going to do it. Yeah, absolutely.
No.
Yeah, they're going to do it. So there's a super chat here from Ryan McDonald, USA. Thank you so much, Ryan. There's something, Peter, maybe you have some good insight into that. The question was, is Bitcoin the answer to central banks and inflation?
Not my wheelhouse. Okay. However, Tucker Carlson had a guy on his day program, as Tucker Carlson Today. He gave a really interesting case that if we go to Bitcoin and other cyber currencies, it deflates the power of these central banks. I'm not going to say I'm a master of this theory, but I find it very, very compelling. That's about as far as I can go. But
Peter, you've had, I mean, I remember watching Crosstalk about Bitcoin. I think you've had a number of Crosstalk, and I also found that you had some advocate on behalf of Bitcoin, very emotional guy. I mean, he got quite hysterical. And,
yeah, I remember now I'm, we're conjuring up the face, don't remember the name.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, but I think what I kind of pushed back, not because I'm against it, is that how do you, it just, it's not so functional. I mean, because he said, I mean, he was a young guy too. He said, I've traveled all over the world and I have my Bitcoin wallet with me. And I wouldn't know the first, go to a hotel. How do I pay Bitcoin? I mean, I have it. How do I give it to you? Okay. Right. See, that's the part that I think a lot of people have a hard time understanding. Okay. Yep. And then the whole part of making coins, using energy and all that, I still don't get that.
Right. No, because I remember that show, and the other guy you had on was a much more orthodox guy. He was basically telling him, hey, cool it, calm down, don't get so worked up about that. And he seemed a little skeptical. I mean, just said something along the lines that I don't quite understand what the value added is of Bitcoin. I mean, and I thought he seemed more persuasive than this very, very emotional and excited young man.
Well, I mean, the thing is, one of the things that I think the pandemic has shown us, I mean, we had indications of this obviously before, but it's patently obvious right now that the authorities want to know how we spend our money. They're very, very interested in that, okay?
Yes.
Very interested. And the more you do it through conventional banking, and these banks seem to be more than happy to give up that private information.
Right.
See, it's a war on cash. That's what they want, and we've seen this with the quote unquote war on drugs. Okay,
right.
Because if you can get rid of cash, then you have the cyber tools to see, and first of all, traditional banking, and then other cyber tools to see money flows. That's what they really are interested in. They hate the authorities. Hate cash. They want you to get out of cash.
No, that's a very good point. But then, how much security does Bitcoin provide?
That's the big question, George. Because I already mentioned zero hedge. I mean, I don't follow crypto. I just don't. Maybe I should. Maybe we should. Yep. But like it lost half its value over the last few months. Okay, it seems to be the fluctuations are really, really dramatic.
Right. So Herman Montoya says Bitcoin is a very powerful tool to, to evade sanctions. That's why El Salvador made it an official legal tender, and then Russia needs to adopt Bitcoin. I think maybe that is the case. I mean, if indeed you can maintain security, and that it can evade all of the surveillance of the central banks of the world, then I think it would be indeed very, very useful. I mean,
but it could be useful for evil ends as well. Okay.
Right, no question. No question. But yeah, I mean, we've seen what happened to Iran. After Trump walked out of the JCPOA. I mean, that it hit Iran really hard because the Americans then moved on all dollar transactions. So therefore, it was very difficult for Iran to sell its oil because the Americans kind of could maintain their control on all transactions that are dollar denominated.
Yeah, but that's a self-inflicted wound, because you know what, everybody, Iran doesn't need the dollar anymore, and it's selling its oil. Okay, this is one of the things I've been following for years. The fiat currency of the world is a dollar, but it's not because of the Treasury's behavior. It is debasing the coin of the American dollar. I mean, if you politicize it, use it as a political tool, you diminish its. What is a fiat currency? It's what you trust. It's that's what it's for. Trust.
Right.
Okay, so if you have the Bank of England taking Venezuela's gold, I mean, with these institutions, why should you trust these? And maybe they'll take your money.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
I mean, you don't play with currencies for political reasons. It'll come back and bite you.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, the only way you can maintain your currency as the global currency in which everybody uses is if everybody trusts it. If they think that you're going to use it for your own narrow political selfish ends, and people aren't going to trust it. They're going to go into other currencies. So yeah. Anyway, there's a super chat from GSP. Thank you so much, GSP. It says thoughts on Bosnia and Orban news. So we've talked about both topics fairly extensively. And apropos of Bosnia-Herzegovina, today there was a long article in the New York Times, which was a kind of a hatchet job on Novak Djokovic. And, needless to say, I mean, I wrote something about it. I posted it on the local board. But needless to say, the thrust of it is Djokovic is a sub-nationalist. And the worst thing you can be in the eyes of the New York Times. And he said, as part of its evidence is that he attended a party in Bosnia-Herzegovina, which was a wedding reception for the most evil man in the world today. This is Milorad Dodik, about whom we'll talk extensively, the representative of the Republika Srpska in the tripartite Bosnian presidency. He attended his wedding, sang at his wedding, and he sat next to somebody who was once a commander here, which was believed to be involved in Srebrenica, so on and so forth. Yeah, he's a really bad guy, so on. But at least the good thing is it's out in the open, which is they've always hated Novak Djokovic because he's a Serb. They've always pretended that this hostility to Djokovic had nothing to do. Oh, he's a cold person, not a very likable person. No, it's because he's a Serb. But as we've discussed, Peter, it looks like Bosnia-Herzegovina could be the little war that the Biden administration is looking for in order to, mend its tattered reputation. Because nothing is working, neither domestically nor internationally. And a lot of these people are the alumni of the 1990s and might think, hey, this could be a nice, easy little thing that we can pull off.
Well, in a reasonable world, somebody is at Foggy Bottom is say, I think we should back off the Russians, really.
Right.
Maybe another day. But the Serbs, everybody hates the Serbs already.
That's right.
The hard work is done.
That's exactly right. Yes. And the New York Times explicitly said just what you said. Everybody hates the Serbs. They, of course, don't say that, hey, we at the New York Times have done our little bit to make sure that everybody hates the Serbs, because you've been demonizing these people for more than 30 years. But yeah, you're exactly right. It means that the propaganda work has been done. There are a few voices like ours who shout against it, but by and large, people say, yeah, these are terrible people. So it's a nice, easy target, except that the Russia of today is not the Russia of the 1990s, and they're very much already in the tank with Serbia proper and Bosnia-Herzegovina.
And the Serbs of Bosnia-Herzegovina, I'll tell you, guess what, everybody? They can say no, okay?
Right.
And they're doing it.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
Wait, so what is NATO going to do? Start a war in the Balkans? It's up to NATO. It's up to NATO to do that. It's their craven choice.
Yeah, no, exactly. If they try to do that, and they've already imposed sanctions, I think they're going to, accelerate that. Try to, be a little bit more menacing. Hey, maybe we're going to send our bombers in. Recalling happier days of 1994 and 95. They're going to get a very, very cold reception from Russia, and you really don't want to get yourself into something, a very, very dangerous situation, because Russia could well open up a second front. Because even if they're not going to send their forces into Bosnia-Herzegovina, you got Ukraine there, and they might sort of make things a little awkward for NATO in Ukraine. So again, you want to confront us here, or you want to?
George, I have this sneaking suspicion that NATO can't walk and chew gum at the same time.
Yeah.
Could be wrong. Could be wrong.
Right, that's right. Yeah, and then on the second part of it is Orban news, as we've just discussed. Orban, he's got a tough election coming up on April the 3rd. So the election date has now been set. He's in the polls. He's a little ahead of the opposition. If I were a betting man, I'd say I think he'd probably pull this off. The opposition is very divided and transparently divided. Yeah, they're all united to get rid of him, but everyone knows that the moment the election is over, if they win, there's going to be difficulty in forming any kind of a government. So there's going to be a problem there. But Orban is doing everything to placate the the domestic population. Pensions, raise the pensions, cut taxes. I mean, whatever it is, you want cheap energy, got cheap energy. Lockdowns, no lockdowns. I mean, it's like whatever he needs to do, he's just throwing things around like candy. Kind of thing politicians used to do.
Wow, populism is very dangerous, isn't it, George?
Right.
Wow.
Yeah.
How dare he think about the people?
That's
oh
right.
my goodness, he must be taken out of power immediately.
Exactly. This is outrageous. And in fact, many of the media reports say just that. This is absolutely scandalous. What? This is an election ploy he raises pensions. What a disgusting ploy.
Yeah. Well, hey, Joe, where's my $2,000 check? Huh? No, you're only Orban does it, right? Yeah. Hey, Joe, where's my $2,000 check?
Right. Yeah. Mitch McConnell, no $2,000 check for you. Only $600. Mitch. And then, whoa, we lost in Georgia. It's all Trump's fault. Wow. What do you think's going to happen when you don't give people $2,000? They get a little pissed off.
These people don't understand politics. So, George, if a politician says, "If you elect me, I will support your interests. I will make your life better. I am for prosperity." But then your opponent says, "I'm going to give you $2,000. Who do you think is going to win? Come on." This is simple stuff. That's
it. Exactly. Yes. The politician, we need to tighten belts. We need, some belt tightening. We need to definitely cut back, on government spending.
And the politician that says $2,000, they don't care if you're Republican or Democrat or independent. They don't care.
Not at all. Not at all. So Orban is just throwing, all this at the public. I think that's going to get him over the line. I mean, I think that, and he's not up against a particularly formidable, charismatic leader. They selected this guy, Marky Zai, because they thought, hey, he's quite a conservative sort of fellow. He's a family man. He's Catholic. He's got 7 children. And so Orban can't present him as a raving lefty. It's not going to work because, he's not a very impressive person. He's just not there's nothing interesting about him.
I have a question for you, George, because I don't trust the media, what's been being said about Orban. But what is a legitimate criticism of Orban, in your opinion?
Well, to be honest, the only criticisms that I have come across is this business of corruption. They keep saying that, he's so corrupt, or his cronies, they've all made money, and they've misappropriated funds and whatnot. The problem is that I haven't seen any of this proven. I mean, it's one of these, it seems to be almost any country, and they say the same thing in Russia. It's all Putin's friends, and they're all making out like bandits, and they're rich. Well, okay. Prove it. I mean, just show who has got money illegally. I mean, do powerful people win contracts?
Yeah.
Everywhere in any country, yeah, powerful.
As Hunter.
Exactly. Are powerful people? Do they have friends in the government? Yes. Is it likely that somebody who's friends with Orban is going to be doing well? Getting winning contract? Yeah, probably.
Members of Congress doing better than the S&P. Yep, it happened.
Yep. That's it. That's it. I mean, it's the way of the world. I mean, look. I mean, it's true, but in any country. I mean, the United States, it's egregiously so. Particularly when we look at the politicians. The whole of these group of people have become fabulously wealthy, and this is something we did a podcast of it a couple of weeks ago about how these politicians who have inside knowledge of upcoming legislation, upcoming hearings, about what lobbyists are pushing for.
Appropriations.
Yeah, exactly. Any measures that might be taken against any regulatory measures that the government might be taking in the near future. They have all of this inside information, and they're still allowed to trade stocks. I mean, it's mind-boggling. And it's amazing again that the media have written so little about this, because to any outsider, you think, hey, this is pretty scandalous. I mean, this is, shameless insider trading.
That's why more times than not, we should call it the uniparty, okay?
Yeah,
because it
right.
goes across the aisle. Everybody, there's not everybody in Congress, but a large, over 50 members have had their collar pulled on it, okay?
Right.
And it's only because of what they reported. I mean, they think that just because you report it, it's okay. It's just, no, that's not what this is supposed to be. But that just shows you how lackluster this is, because they don't want to rock the boat. There are too many people making too much money. And Nancy Pelosi is probably at the top of the pack.
That's right.
Who would have thought a woman that just has a real fondness for whiskey was such a financial whiz?
Exactly, yeah, a financial whiz, yeah.
And who knew, a Speaker of the House that's so fond of having a belt in the afternoon, and now looks like Michael Jackson. I mean, he's just pulling it off left and right. Did you see those eyebrows? What's going on there, George?
Very, very, very weird. Yeah.
Very
horrific. And he said Michael, because also her voice sounded rather like Michael Jackson's voice, which is this strange.
Well, when the war criminal Dick Cheney was in the well of the house with his daughter. I was trying to think of an adjective, but I'll leave it at that. This is family content.
Family show, exactly.
Okay. See, what I saw was, it's one of those things, like they show the movement on the floor, and then they put this like spotlight, in the video. And then it's on Cheney and his daughter, and it showed Nancy running, just like this scarecrow running. It was so weird. Okay.
She was running. Where was she running? She was running towards him.
She was running from her seat. She had I thought it was gonna fly. She was flying down. So happy to greet a man that should be in prison for any number of charges, war profiteering, starting illegal wars, and Nancy Pelosi embraces it. This is what has happened. This is what has happened, is that you have this uniparty. They all cash in on these illegal wars. They lie to us about every possible topic, okay? Yep. Nancy Pelosi embracing Dick Cheney, okay? Yep. You don't need Netflix for a horror story. You just saw it.
Yeah, no, that's right, exactly. She embraced it, but she at some point, I seem to remember, she made a great show of being against the Iraq War. All for show. I mean, it was none of it meant anything. I mean, she was trying to win some political points. Hey, I'm against the Bush administration or whatever. But yeah, I mean, they're all of a piece, the same people, and they hate it if anyone comes along and threatens to rock the boat, which Trump did initially, before suddenly, Trump seemed to embrace the very deep state that tried to destroy him. But yeah, I mean, when he started saying, "Hey, these are stupid wars, and we need to, get ourselves out of them," whoa, that caused a lot of uproar.
Well, with Nancy as being part of the Gang of Eight, she knew all about the waterboarding, all about the torture. So she really, all the wind was out of her sails. She was culpable like the rest of them. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, absolutely. That's absolutely. But it's very funny what you said. She's running to, so eager, and all of those people, they're all eager to pump, and and it's,
they were lined up, George. They were lined up.
Yeah.
Like a celebrity.
Yeah, no, that's right. And and again, they do the same thing with George W. Bush. You remember back in the day, I remember all the talk, Bush, Bush is a criminal and whatever, illegal war and whatnot. They all love Bush. I mean, and Bush became very, very friendly with the old man was very friendly with the Clintons, and then Bush got very friendly with Obama. So, yeah, very, very nice. So whenever you have these ex-presidents club, and I think it speaks very well for Trump, he isn't a member of the ex-presidents club. He doesn't get invited to anything.
When Barack Obama was inaugurated, the President's Club met in the Oval Office, and they even had Jimmy Carter there.
Yep, exactly.
Okay.
Jimmy Carter. Exactly. I mean, it was he must be in his late 90s, and he's still, yeah. but Trump, no, he's never there. You know, it's quite an extraordary thing. So it says,
and you know what, George? You know what, George? Donald Trump doesn't give a hoot.
No. So Herman Montoya says Nancy Pelosi's net worth is over 100 million, and her husband, he runs a hedge fund. Yeah, no, that's right. But it's like, well, I'm so successful. I run a hedge fund. Yeah, if you have insider information, I could run a bloody hedge fund if I had insider information. I mean, if I knew what was going to happen, I mean, yeah, I could make a lot of money.
Yeah. And if you're the son of a then presidential candidate, right, now son of a president, and you are flying on Air Force 2 to Beijing, yeah, you're probably going to clinch $1 billion deal, probably.
Was it what Trump would say about, hey, I know something about the Chinese. They don't sign, $1 billion deals. They don't give you $1 billion. These people are, they are tight-fisted. I mean,
they're mercenary. Mercenary people.
They'll fight, over.
Never been to an Asian market?
Yes. Yeah.
Oh, yes.
Yes, absolutely.
My wife will cut my name. They do that all the time. My wife will kill me. My wife will kill me.
That's it. That's right. There you go. That's right. They will fight. I mean, it's like, and look, you hear about people who work, for Chinese-owned businesses, and how they run those businesses. Boy, you spend 10 cents on this. That's coming out of your paycheck. So yeah. So the idea that they give somebody $1 billion. That's not that's not how they work. So
but Victor Orban is corrupt. Okay.
That's exactly. That's right. What was it? You remember that thing with Hillary Clinton when was it she invested, was it $1,000, and then it was converted to $100,000? Remember that whole thing? It's just and they say, and it's just, well, how does she make, go from $1,000 to $100,000? Well, she read the Wall Street Journal. She's an assiduous reader of the Wall Street Journal. And then, of course, they had all these, financiers and say, hey, you try it. Can you go from $1,000 to $100,000? Nobody, the greatest wizards couldn't come up with any scheme to go from $1,000 to $100,000.
Well, you had to bring it up, didn't you? But HRC, and when having the main broadsheets mention her name as we needed adults in the room. I thought we tried that strategy, but it didn't work. But the first thing that came to my mind was not Hillary versus Trump. No, that wasn't my first thought. Was the Clinton Foundation. They want to get back into business. That's what they want. They want that. Okay.
Right.
And the presidency, of course, would be the crowning jewel. But if she were, for some miraculous reason, get back into the White House, it would mean the Clinton gravy train would last for a very, very long time. Don't separate it, you guys. It's all about that. It's all about that. And one other corollary for me is that I think Hillary just wants to metaphorically disarm, decapitate, hit in the knees Barack Obama.
Right. Yeah.
No love lost there.
No, I think that's right. I think you're right. I mean, I think that once this goes out there, that she's going to possibly make a comeback.
Ching ching, ching ching, ching ching.
Hey, because as long as she's just around, she can go on MSNBC, she can go on CNN, but there's no great value added. I mean, that's it. I mean, she's just somebody, raving and raging about something that happened many years ago. But here, hey, she's making a comeback, and then yes. So that I think you have a very good point there. Look, I mean, the guy who brought this up, it was Doug Schoen.
Yeah,
Doug Schoen. Of course, he's a Clinton flag. He's been with the Clintons for decades, but he's an influential person. He's not a nobody. I mean, he's I think people listen to what he says. So when he made,
I do. Yeah, I listen to him.
Right.
Because because he wears his stripes on his sleeve. He's an operator. He's a Clinton guy. But actually, he during the Trump administration, he used to go on Fox all the time, and he used to talk about Democrat, and he would say what he thought. Okay, what they, talking about the squad and stuff like that. So he's plugged in. He's plugged in, and he wouldn't have written that if there weren't something behind it. Come on.
Absolutely, because I am sure that he talks to the Clintons, Bill and Hillary all the time. So when he wrote that, this is after consulting with them and after having conversations with them, because he wouldn't have written it unless he'd already been given a signal that this is something that they were interested in. He does this, and now everybody's talking about it. And that means that people, money men in the Democratic Party are talking about it. In other words, the Clintons have put this out there. Hey, I'm still around. I'm still available. And to be honest, I mean, we talked about this a few weeks ago on the Gaggle as to whether, is Hillary Clinton mounting a comeback, simply because there wasn't really anyone else. I mean, we obviously saw the weaknesses of Biden and Harris. So who else is there? And I mentioned the possibility of John Kerry, but now if he's bringing up John Kerry, then why not Hillary Clinton? I mean, I think Hillary's saying, "Hey, I'm a more likely candidate than John Kerry." So I think it's out there. It's something that's real.
In Clinton world, no one has an original idea.
No.
Okay, the idea comes from the top, and then it's sent out.
Yeah.
Remember Russiagate?
Yeah.
Remember where it started, okay?
Exactly. That's
they
right.
sent out the signal, and then the machine started churning it out, okay?
Yes.
So what they want to prepare, look, compared to, I mean, again, I reflected upon this a few weeks ago when Hillary did this podcast about reading her inaugural address that she never gave, thank goodness. What I think was happening, I think Trump has tapped into this too, is they're showing the public a juxtaposition to Joe. Okay. Yep. Now they tried to do this with Harris, but you just simply can't. Right. I mean, what do they have to do? Just here's the question, here's the card, read it. Okay. Right. I mean, is that what they have to do now?
Right. Yeah. No, I think that's I think that's right. But I think I was watching Harris this week. I mean, because she did that interview with that MSNBC guy, Melvin, whatever. And I think you were right to point out that she's lost the cackle. The cackle isn't there anymore. And so
the scorn is still there.
Right, exactly. But, being very serious is actually, that's even less appealing because then her nastiness comes out. The point about the cackle kind of, it seemed to ease the atmosphere, because otherwise all we'd get is this rather nasty person. Say Hillary Clinton did the cackle as well. It somehow relieves it, and then people don't notice what a thoroughly unlikable, objectionable person she is.
The problem with the cackle and the difference between the Hillary cackle and the Harris cackle, there's a significant difference, even though it sounds similar, is that when Harris cackles, no one else is laughing. When Hillary would cackle, she had her paid operatives to laugh along, okay? So when you're cackling alone, it's not working. Your mojo is not working when you're cackling alone. I think we should make that a Gaggle rule, okay?
Right. Yes, yeah, no, that's right. I remember when P.G. Woodhouse, he spent some time out in Hollywood, and then he wrote about it. And he had these short stories about Hollywood. And so whenever you had this Hollywood big shot, and he was always surrounded by people who were all assigned a particular role. So that one would say, "Yes, I agree, sir." And then somebody else would say, And then somebody would just nod. And then somebody would just simply smile. And so, so whatever he said, you go down the line. So in the same way, Hillary Clinton cackles. That means somebody else has to immediately jump in and cackle along with her. Because if you cackle and no one else is cackling, that doesn't look good.
Apparently, Jeffrey Epstein operated that way. Everybody was in sync with him. And then when that odd fellow was like, he would fall apart, perfectly choreographed environment, okay? Yep. Actually, since we're talking about Kamala Harris, you know what I think they should do if they want to do a remake? have her be interviewed by someone that it's hostile and see if she's any better. Maybe if she's attacked, she might find something inside her. I was just thinking about that today, because how many more softball interviews can you give? It's getting worse and worse and worse.
Yes. Yes.
I mean, if you're going to go down, why don't you go down flaming? Okay, at least to make it memorable.
Yes. Yes. No, I think that's an interesting observation, because I'm just thinking about her vice presidential debate against Pence. I mean, I think Pence got the better of that, but she didn't do that badly. I mean, it wasn't a complete disaster. So yeah, so you know, it may be an idea that where she is confronted by somebody who is hostile, you know, then she'd be hostile obviously back, but at least you say, okay, well, she's being hostile because she's up against somebody
fighting back.
Yeah, fighting back. Whereas if you're hostile with a friendly interviewer, then it looks very bad. I mean, this guy, he's asked you a friendly question, and you still make a hostile response, like, you haven't been to the border. I haven't been to Paris. So I mean, it looks very bad.
If she wants to save any semblance of her of what's left of her, she should go on Sean Hannity's radio show for 3 hours. You know what? She will get acolytes no matter what happened. She went on though. She did. She fought.
Yeah. No,
she would get acolytes just for doing that.
No, I think that's a very good point. But of course, not everybody is up for that. I mean, it's a tough thing. I mean, maybe not necessarily Hannity. I don't know whether you saw yesterday Hannity with Austin Goolsbee. That
was a train wreck.
Okay. Yeah, that wasn't a very good. It wasn't big, and it was a strange interview because there were many arguments Hannity could have made, which I think would have been more difficult for Goolsbee to handle. But instead, they got into this whole thing about the pipeline. I don't know why they wasted all that time on the Keystone pipeline.
They were talking at cross purposes, okay, and I can appreciate that, okay.
Yeah.
And if you bring somebody on, I mean, I've experienced this myself. People that are hostile, you have to hear them out. You have to do it because I win that way. An interview process, when you're, and I'm telling everyone, is a kind of a strategy. If you're, someone is hostile to you, you have to change your mindset. It's not easy to do, but you have to change your mindset. Your mindset should be the following: don't try to win, just make sure you don't lose.
Right.
And then you're okay. Then you're okay. And Kamala Harris, why we're trying to give her advice, I don't know, maybe we should have our heads examined here. Right. But don't try to win. Just make sure you don't lose. And then I think you'll come out on top.
No, I think so. And I think that when you're up against somebody who's hostile, then I think you should adopt the strategy of being a trial lawyer. A trial lawyer asks short questions, and then then you kind of pounce when the person has said something silly or contradicted himself. And so I think that's an effective strategy. Because let Goolsbee talk, and then you kind of hit him, because if you get into an argument, then you really are just talking across purposes, and I think that's not so. I think your best strategy, I think, is the cross-examining attorney.
Yeah, but you're right, because they're looking at meta narratives, and because of the medium and the venue, you're not going to be able to accomplish very much. But what George is suggesting is absolutely right. Let him answer a question, and then take one thing that you can use, okay, for your art. Just focus on that. And what it does to the viewer is that, if you punctured it there, the whole argument must be fallacious. Okay. See, that's a strategy. Instead of just, being a boulder against a boulder, you just create a lot of dust. Okay. Nothing really changes.
Right. It's a very interesting example of that. You can see it on YouTube, is when William F. Buckley was debating Tony Benn, who was then very, very big in labor. This was around 1979, 1980, just before the 1980 presidential election. And you could see Buckley was trying to attack Benn, you're the far left of the Labour Party and so on, communists and whatever. And Ben was just constantly pointing out how ill-informed Buckley was. I mean, it's like, all Ben had to do was just, no, every single thing you've just said there is wrong. And then you go point by point by point, everything. And you got really on the sense, Buckley was just in over his head. So rather than getting into a whole thing about, which is better, socialism or capitalism, you just simply say, you just don't know what you're talking about, mate.
With that, one thing I can't say that I understand very well the parliamentary procedures of House of Commons. But when they had the Brexit debate, I really enjoyed watching. I thought it was really good television, some of it, because it's a very different tradition than what we have in the US. And I think someone like Red Ben, as he was called, I knew his nephew, okay? And he studied in Poland with me, amazing. Is that, if you look at the style of the debate and the best of them, okay, is it exactly what George and I were saying, is that, you're dealing with a completely foreign, separate meta narrative, but what you do is you go after the nitty gritty and you score points that way, okay? Exactly. And the whole Brexit thing, I found, some of the procedures I just didn't get. I didn't understand what was going on, but it was that kind of public speaking. I really, really enjoy it, okay? Yes. George Galloway, when he was being grilled by the U.S. Senate. Whoa, boy, he mopped the floor with those guys.
That's right. Yeah, who was that guy? There was, I think Levine, I think, was the Democrat, and then there was a Republican from Minnesota, Norm Coleman. And boy, Galloway again, strongly advise people to look that up on YouTube, just like the Tony Benn Buckley debate, look it up on YouTube, but also Galloway testifying before the Senate. I think it must have been 2005, something like that, because already 2 years after Iraq, and he just, boom, he just went through all of the things that you got wrong, and he said something like,
I was going to say, so you met Saddam Hussein 3 times, and he said fewer times than Donald Rumsfeld.
But he had something like, he was saying, you are wrong and I was right. You were wrong and I was right. It just went through all of this thing about, you said that he had weapons of mass destruction. You were wrong. I was right. Yeah, you said that it would be easy to defeat Iraq. You were wrong. I was right. It was
and for everybody to understand, okay, the House of Representatives and the Senate, they have very different traditions about decorum, okay? And so the House, it can be a bit rough, a little rowdy, but in the Senate, there is the absolute demand of decorum. George Galloway didn't know it and he didn't care. And you could tell that the Senate committee, its members were, you could see them like when I was right and you were wrong, you could see them like go back. You see what I mean? They're like, whoa, okay. And good for George Galloway, okay, because he's a good faith actor, okay.
That's right. Yeah. That's right. So there's a question from Jonathan. Thank you so much, Jonathan. It says best and worst UK prime ministers. Well, that's a really tough one. I mean, but by most historians consider the worst UK prime minister was Lord North, because he presided over the loss of the American Empire. So, in terms of that's a pretty big thing to lose. So he's always regarded as the worst prime minister. I mean, I'm not sure who one would call. I mean, the best prime minister. I mean, you got so Lloyd George was an effective prime minister. He was during World War I. And I wouldn't say Churchill was one of the best prime minister. I mean, I think that he had enormous reputation by then, but so many of the military fiascos in World War II can be attributed to Churchill.
And before.
And before, I mean, his career started with fiascos. I mean, it was an amazing.
Gallipoli.
Yeah, exactly. All of the Gallipoli, the gold standard, when he put Britain back on the gold standard, which led to the complete disaster of the Great Depression and everything. So,
but but he was a great leader at the time.
He was a great leader, exactly.
You got to give him that.
Exactly. No question.
And Neville Chamberlain is given a bad rap, in my opinion. Okay. Theresa May is close to the bottom.
Exactly, among the worst. Yes, exactly.
Cameron is in the same category.
Yes, exactly. Cameron, Theresa May. They're
Gordon Brown. I just feel sorry for him because he was after Blair.
Yes, that's right. That's right. I think Chamberlain was I think a very effective. He had a certain idea. I mean, and he was determined to pursue them. His idea was we need to just delay this war as long as possible. Yeah, and that's it. That was the same view that Stalin had, and this is what you do. And you're the leader of a country. You just basically delay it for as long as possible. It's nuts to go into a war when you haven't got your ducks in a row and you're just going to get hammered, which is what happened in 1939. You got into a war, you weren't able to do anything for Poland, and then you had the humiliation of in the next year of the evacuation of Dunkirk. I mean, what did you achieve by going to war?
Clement Attlee. I mean, first of all, he introduced the welfare state.
Absolutely, he's a good prime minister. Very good prime minister.
Very good prime minister. Yeah. But the most famous story I know about him, I think I've already told it on the Gaggle, but I'll repeat it because I like it. Is that you have to realize the Potsdam conference was going on when they had the elections in the UK, and Churchill was there, and then he's no longer prime minister. Sure. Clement Attlee is now prime minister. Right. And so he told Stalin, maybe he told Roosevelt too, but certainly Stalin, he said, there's Clement Attlee, there's less there than meets the eye.
That's it. The way he said that. I think he also said about him that he's a sheep in sheep's clothing.
Yeah, there you go.
That's right. Yeah.
I mean, he was a very effective.
Very effective. And he presided. Yeah, he presided over a front bench of talents. I mean, those are big heavyweights on that front bench, and he was number one. Everyone respected that he was the leader. So
I always have a soft spot for Wilson.
Me too. I think he was also a very successful prime minister. Very clever man. Very, very clever. Very funny. I mean, it's like if you ever watch him in action, he was just hilarious. Because in particular the prime minister's question time, he was devastating in his riposte. I mean, it was clever and actually a successful prime ministership. I mean, he was there for 6 years, and as he always pointed out, he won 4 out of 5 elections, and that's an all-time record. I think if you win 4 out of 5 general elections, I think that is an all-time record.
And then he just kind of said, "I've had enough." I mean.
Yeah, that's right. And then he went on to
he left on his own terms.
That's right.
And he's one of the very few that was truly an intellectual. He's a true intellectual.
He was a don. He was a don at Oxford. And then after he left prime minister, he wrote books, pretty good books. I mean, he wrote about government. He wrote a book about the Middle East. So he was definitely these were good serious books that he went on to write.
Who was after Thatcher?
John Major. Yeah, no,
he's in the bottom of the barrel too.
Okay. He's bottom. Yeah, no one ever said that he was a clever man or an intellectual. Or
what was the joke about him? Is that he tucks his shirt under his underwear? What was it? There was always this kind of weird. Yeah, he was very stiff guy.
Right. Yeah. Exactly. But Bear was said about him. Oh well, he's the kind of person you want to have a beer with. I never understood that. I never wanted to have a beer.
Wilson, I'd have a beer with.
Right. Exactly. Because that would be, he'd have interesting stories to tell. But no, I never. Really, I want to go and have a beer with him. I mean. So,
but anyway, but the caliber of it, George and I have been chronicling this, I mean, I think I've said this before, and I think it's important to say again, is that if we look at the post-war period at the end of the Second World War, you and I can name almost all of the prime ministers of Britain, all the presidents of France, a lot of the prime ministers of France, certainly Germany with, in our sleep, okay? As in the present, like I always say, who's head of the Defense Department?
I know, that's always a tough one. I mean, because we go through this every time when we're talking about British politics, now who's the foreign secretary now? Is it that Dominic Raab? No, it's Liz Truss. And then Liz Truss, who's she? And then I think the defense guy is still this Ben Wallace. I mean, the only thing we know about Ben Wallace is that we have difficulties remembering him, but I think it's still Ben Wallace's defense, but maybe I'm wrong about that. So.
And German politics, I mean,
right.
Heavy hitters,
right.
Whoa, people
right.
that left a mark. These people,
right.
I don't know.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think,
and I give it to Angela Merkel, and for me, she was a huge disappointment.
Right.
I think it could have worked out very differently.
Right.
But I mean, she left a legacy. I mean, and it's up for us to dissect it and all that. But the one thing that George, you pointed out when it comes to Boris Johnson, they'll put up with him for anything as long as he wins elections. Angela Merkel won elections.
That's right. That's exactly right. But particularly, I mean, the whole Tory experience. The Tories got rid of Churchill in 1955. That was the great Churchill. They got rid of him because they thought he was out of it. They were going to lose the election with Churchill. Then Anthony Eden, his successor, they got rid of him after the Suez debacle. They got rid of Harold Macmillan. These are all incumbent prime ministers. So and
Thatcher.
Thatcher, and before that, Edward Heath had lost the election, but he was convinced that he would still be re-elected as party leader. But instead, Thatcher threw her hat in the ring, and boom, she defeated the Heath. So and then, as you say, got rid of. So Johnson, all these debacles that are going on now with these garden parties. That I didn't know that this was a party. I thought this was a work thing. People are drinking booze. Well, I thought this was a work thing.
That happens to me all the time.
Yeah, me too. I mean, but no one's buying it, and it's the kind of thing that pisses people off. They think, hey, you're taking us for fools. And no one likes to be taken for a fool, and so I can't see Johnson surviving much longer. Yeah, I may be wrong, but to me, it just seems like his prime ministership is just.
Well, again, it goes back to your axiom here. I mean, he'll survive if the party thinks he's electable. If he's not electable, they'll take him out on the Friday night trash.
Exactly. And when you get these absolute thumpings in the by-elections, you can say, oh, by-election doesn't matter. But it's an indication of where the party is. So wow. I mean, we got really thumped here. I don't think we're going to recover before the next election. I think then, and yes, he won in 2019, but what have you done for me lately? So
and if you pull it to the U.S., I mean, we've already touched upon it here. I mean, there's not much of a bench for the Democrats. For the Republicans, they got a crowded bench of a lot of mediocre people. Okay. Right. And this is what overall when George and I've been talking about since the inception of the Gaggle is just the mediocrity of the people that rule over us.
Yeah. No, that's right. It is extraordinary because if you think about the in 2016 when Trump threw his hat in the ring. And we, including me, I thought, this is just going to be, a little bit of fun for a couple of weeks, and then it'll just fade away. I mean, be entertaining. And then he just knocked out all of these people. It was supposed to, we have this very deep bench. You had 16 candidates, governor here, senator there, Marco Rubio, Chris Christie, the guy from Texas,
Lindsey Graham,
and all of them, and. He just swept them aside, in no time. I mean, that's how unimpressive they all were, relative to this neophyte Trump.
This may surprise a lot of people. We're gonna have to wrap this up here because I have to get ready for work tomorrow for Crosstalk. But I saw a few interviews with Marianne Williamson.
Yeah.
She's very interesting to listen to.
Right.
She's she doesn't talk in a political idiom, and that's what makes her really kind of, I mean, I'm not always sure what she's getting at, but she's like talking about things in a different dimension. It's very compelling. Just odd. I just saw an interview with her, I guess 2 days ago, a long one too.
Right.
And it was very interesting to listen to her. I think, she talks a lot more about morality and character that I think we need to have a little bit more in our public discourse instead of always trying to score points. Okay.
Yes.
Anyway, I just thought It was just, I just wanted to admit, George and I agreed. We thought Trump was a joke candidacy, he'd be out in a few weeks.
Right.
People said the same thing about Marianne, and then you give them a second look, have a different opinion.
No, that's right. That's right. I mean, it's a question, do you have anything interesting to say? But you never know, because I thought that guy among the Democrats,
Andrew Yang.
And exactly, you read my mind. Andrew Yang, he seemed like an interesting person, didn't have, wasn't particularly ideological, and, had interesting, innovative ideas. I thought he would do better. I thought he would catch on.
Well, you know what? I watched his mayoral campaign in New York. He just fell into their traps one step out. I was like, what's wrong with you? Right. During the presidential campaign, sure, you didn't win, but you became, for people that are interested in politics, a household name. Right. The Yang Gang. Okay, yes. I remember that Yang Gang. I like it too. Okay, right. And then he plays into this really awful, primitive, childish New York City politics. When he should have said, "I'm not going to get in the gutter with you. I got a different agenda." He should have done that.
Yeah. No, I quite agree. So going back to our previous conversation, we have a super chat from Darren Levy. Thank you so much, Darren. I think he's saying about the best and worst prime ministers. And so he's listed William Pitt the Younger as among the best prime ministers. He was a very good prime minister. Was a prime minister during the Napoleonic Wars, which were quite catastrophic for Great Britain, because Napoleon had kind of conquered the continent and was challenging British naval supremacy. So it was quite awkward. But eventually the British got back into it, used their financial power, the ability to build coalitions, and were able to defeat Napoleon. But it was when Napoleon called Britain as the land of shopkeepers, which the British, I think, have always been, okay, we're the land of shopkeepers, but
they conquered a quarter of the world.
All right, exactly, but they just infuriated Napoleon. And then we have Jonathan, there's a super chat, who said, "Today is my 28th birthday. Congratulations, Jonathan. Very happy for you." I don't know. Do you want to be 28 again, Peter? I don't know. No. Yeah, me neither. But okay. But anyway, but congratulations, Jonathan. And then, hey man, another super chat. Thank you. And it says, politicians are recruited actors to legitimize bad ideas from think tanks.
There's something to it. Look at Macron.
Yeah, that's exactly right. You kind of bring these people in, and then you kind of pump them with this whatever. Buttigieg, exactly. Like Buttigieg was someone cultivated very early on. Well, he's a future leader. You don't know why the hell they decided one.
What?
What? I mean, how does it come about? You're the mayor of a small town, and then lo and behold, you're running for the presidency. I mean, at least Bill de Blasio was the mayor of New York City, but some
right.
Yeah, exactly. You're the mayor of some rinky-dink town, and right away you're running for the presidency. So all the time, there were powerful forces who were kind of moving in forward. They kind of built this little career. You put all these ducks in a row. In order, so hey,
Barack Obama.
That's exactly the case. So that's right. So, and then welcome Spectre in the air. Another super chat from you. Thanks so much, Spectre. So hi guys, sorry I'm late. Just finished trainer bike ride. Oh yeah. So Spectre always has some very lively exercise that he's been doing along with his daughter. It's kind of envy. People
trying to shame us.
Exactly. But I thought, I just finished my bike ride and a swim and and a run and and what have I been doing? Well, I kind of been basically just sitting around.
I have a beer cooling in the refrigerator.
Exactly, a beer cooling. So yeah, it does indeed shame us, but we are very positive about health and fitness.
I feel better just hearing that. Thank you.
Exactly, and I think health and fitness, I think, are very good things, and people should do them, including us, but we don't, unfortunately.
We're living vicariously for
Vicariously, exactly. Yeah, exactly. We feel better. Lost some weight just thinking about that.
Just thinking.
Yeah, but it is kind of the interesting issue about these kind of creatures like Obama, Macron. They really are just you kind of invent them. They're all kind of good looking, articulate, non-ideological, and then you can just sort of thrust them in. And they're very much the same person. They're kind of globalists, corporatists.
And they work perfectly in our media environment because everything is a bumper sticker.
Right. Yes, exactly. Yeah, that's right. Spectre responds to us. It says, "No shame intended. I have to exercise to maintain my health due to issues." Well, we weren't serious about that. You were shaming us, but we insist that. It's a very good thing to do.
We admire it. We admire
exactly. Doing exercise bike, real life bike, running.
Of course, you ride a bicycle.
I ride a bicycle as well. But it is true that in the winter, I don't ride it as much as I do normally, because partly it's cold, but also that the streets here in Budapest aren't especially well lit, and so when it gets dark, I do get a little bit nervous. Because I don't see things so well, and I'm not happy doing it because I just get a little nervous. But the weather when it's warmer and the days are longer, then the thing is. But that's why it's so silly. This whole switching clocks in the winter is so foolish, because you want people to be exercising in the winter, so you want to give them an additional hour of daylight so that they're able to exercise. So that's why people get so fat in the winter, that it gets dark so quickly.
Let me tell everybody what I have to live with here. Hang on. Okay, hang on here. So, see, when with sun. Okay, sunrise. Okay, because it's past. Hang on here. So the sun will come up at 8:48 tomorrow morning, and it will set at 4:30 in the afternoon.
Right.
Okay.
And that's already mid-January. So that's
mid-January.
Yeah,
okay.
Yeah.
I mean, and it was worse 2 weeks ago.
Exactly. That's right. Yeah. That's right. But they do this, in the Western world. I mean, at least you don't do this clock changing nonsense. But they do this. And now we lose. It's already bad enough in the winter, so we'll lose another hour of daylight, and then you complain. Well, yeah, it cuts back on people's exercises, because for kids and everyone else, then there isn't time for football practice because 4 o'clock it's already.
Well, but there's something called the uses of adversity. It's not today because it's a snowstorm right now. But much to my surprise is that families, you see them up to 10 o'clock at night in pitch black. Well, my area is pretty well lit, but I mean, they've built this like little snow. The parents built a little snow mountain for their kids. So you hear kids running around, they all look like Michelin men because they're all nice and warm, but the uses of adversity, get the kids out, let them play, let them run and scream, because they'll go to bed when you bring them home. Okay.
Right.
And it's still, it doesn't matter if it's cold, if it's dark, they keep continuing. I love that about the Russian spirit. Okay.
Right.
What I just do is I have a beer and watch.
Right. No, exactly. That's the natural thing, because the problem in the winter, when it gets dark, is that by 7 o'clock you feel like, hey, it's been dark for hours and hours. It must be the middle of the night now. I mean, you kind of forget. No,
it's an excuse for drinking.
yeah, that's right. So it got and then was a reckless abandon says it says it's still 5:51 a.m. too early for the golf course. Well, yeah, I mean there are people who do like to work out in the mornings, but that's a kind of minority. I mean, it's so.
All right, everybody, please get your super chats in now, because I really have to get ready for tomorrow's recording.
Exactly. So if you want, you get your super chats, always very welcome. You've been very generous so far, but yeah, absolutely. So yeah, no, I think it's a very interesting week. We talked about it yesterday, and it's see what happens. It's Victoria Newland gave another one of her ridiculous interviews the other day, and it was a very amusing thing. She said that NATO is a defensive alliance, so there's absolutely no reason for anyone to be afraid. And she said NATO is a defensive alliance. NATO, was only defending its own. So it's a defensive alliance, so it expands, and then once it expands,
it owns
its own. Yeah, we're defending our own. Oh, that's right. So that's it. It's all entirely defensive. We just keep moving ever eastward. Hey, we're only defending our own.
But we just want the Leningrad region. That's it. Okay.
That's it. Exactly.
We'll be done. We'll be done.
That will be done. And once you get that, hey, it's defensive. We're defending our own.
Well, everybody, maybe sign off here. George was on Crosstalk last Tuesday that aired on Wednesday.
Mm-hmm.
So George will be making his triumphant return, not tomorrow, but next Sunday. And we have a good guest. I'm not going to say, I'm not even telling George. I have a good guest because we have 2 on Sunday and it airs on Monday.
Yep.
George just mentioned Victoria Newland. Unfortunately, everyone, I think we're going to be, Crosstalk is going to continue with that theme because I think it's very important. It's not getting the coverage it really, truly deserves here.
Right.
A lot of people I know that I'm in contact with during the day, not all of them friends of Russia, even they are very worried about what's going on right now. So we're good soldiers. We're going to stick to it, stay in the trenches and tell you guys what's really happening.
Right, Peter, we've got a couple of super chats. So we got first Spectre in the air says again, sorry I was late, can't think of a good question while gasping for air. NATO really has run its course. Yeah, I think that's true. Sorry to put you on the spot, Spec. I know you're gasping for air. And then we have Darren Levy. Thank you so much, Darren. And Darren asked, do you think the Libyan election would be delayed again, seeing that they're afraid of Gaddafi's son winning? Yeah, I mean, I think they are very much afraid of Gaddafi's son winning. But I would think, Gaddafi's son is about the only person there who can do anything to bring Libya together, to bring the two halves of Libya together. I can't think of any other way. I mean, otherwise, other than the way it continues, which is that it's permanently split. And I think that's why they don't want Gaddafi there, because I think the powers are quite happy to see it split like this. So I do think that they're going to do their damnedest to keep Gaddafi's son from winning. What do you think?
Oh, the empire of chaos. That's Wait, I mean, from particularly the United States point of view and NATO's point of view, hey, Libya, I'm going to say this ironically, if it's not broken, why fix it? Well, it's very broken, and they have no intention of fixing it. No,
I think again, that's a very, I think Gaddafi's Libya, they didn't like it at all. I mean, he was an effective leader. He was a kind of also a leader within Africa.
Demonstration effect. They hated it.
That's right. Exactly. So they were determined to keep him out. He was trying to mess around with currencies and everything. Wanted to challenge the Western currency system. They moved against him, and lo and behold, they broke the country up. It's been an absolutely horrific, absolute nightmare.
And of course, no one has been held accountable. We came, we saw, he died. He died, yeah.
It's very funny, that Hillary Clinton always talks about, the sexism and all the hostility toward me. She has got away literally with murder, with that gleeful cackle. Imagine any other, politician saying, we came, we saw, he died. And particularly as Gaddafi had been murdered in a very brutal, horrific way, and she's gleeful about it. And it's certainly the United States was directly involved in that. I mean, they were the ones who tipped off these forces where exactly he was. So then they captured him and tortured him and murdered him. So this is a war crime directly implicating Hillary Clinton, and she just goes cackling.
Remember, everyone, nobody in power wanted Osama bin Laden to face justice. Nobody in power wanted to capture and bring to trial for alleged crimes of Gaddafi. No, they never make it to trial. Okay,
Right.
That's what the rule of law means to them. Okay, because the trial would reveal their crimes, and Julian Assange will never get a fair trial because it'll be, quote, for national security reasons. Okay,
Right.
The power will always protect themselves.
Absolutely. So we have another super chat from Harry Smith. Thank you, Harry. So first question is, why doesn't Ukraine join the CSTO if it's so concerned for its security? That would solve all its problems at once. And then question two, how important is Kaliningrad to Moscow? Peter, why doesn't Ukraine join the CSTO? What Ukraine
should do, and I've been vilified for it, but it's called we need the Finlandization of Ukraine. Ukraine doesn't join any military blocs. It becomes neutral. It doesn't need to have a large military force, and have it in writing, okay? Right. That no one will violate, not Russia, not NATO, no one will violate Ukraine. That's a way out for everybody. It's a way out for everyone, okay? And Kaliningrad, yes, it's very important to Russia, extremely important to Russia. And it's so important that that's what NATO fears. That's what keeps it up at night.
Yes. No, I absolutely agree with you. And I think that it would be a perfectly reasonable a solution for Ukraine, which was the kind of neutrality, a commitment on the part of Ukraine that it would be neutral. And the Finlandization, maybe, was a kind of a dirty word. They said, oh, the Finlandization of Europe. But as the Russians used to point out then back in the day and during the Cold War, well, Finland has it actually pretty good. It maintains its independence. It doesn't have a communist government, and whatever it does internally, no problems. The only thing that was expected of Finland is that it doesn't station any NATO forces, and it doesn't go out of its way to criticize the Soviet Union and Soviet foreign policy. So they just don't antagonize them. But otherwise, what was wrong with it? I mean, it was a nice deal for Finland. But it was a dirty word. Oh my God! Western Europe will become Finlandized. So
one of the best things about the Finlandization of Finland was coffee table books, because the Russians had the art. They would take beautiful photographs of them, and it was these Finnish companies that published them in these beautiful, beautiful books. It was a win-win for the Soviet Union and for Finland, because the cost of that, first of all, the Russians didn't do it very well, and they knew it, but they had the raw material. The Finns did it very, very well. It was a great profit-sharing thing, and a lot of people got beautiful art on their coffee table desk. Just one example of how it can be a win-win situation.
Right. So we got a super chat from Spectre in the Air. It says, have a good week, guys. Thank you so much, Spectre. And it says, Finland is actually quite impressive militarily. They learned from World War II, have to take care of themselves. Yeah, I mean, but Finland, of course, also did pretty well during World War II. I mean, they, initially when the Soviets attacked, they kind of they performed quite well against the Red Army. Subsequently, they were defeated, but I think that the Soviets kind of realized that this was not a great idea fighting against the Finns, partly because they didn't want to antagonize Hitler at that stage, because Hitler started getting hey, these are Nordic people, we can't have Nordic people being defeated by Slavs. So they knew that Hitler was unhappy about all of that. But then afterwards they said, well, why get into any sort of a conflict with Finland? Why do all this to them? I mean, true, it had been a part of the Russian Empire, but there was really no need for that. So, could have been a lot worse for Finland, but in fact, they really did very well after World War II.
Actually, from what I understand, that Stalin had a begrudging respect for the Finns because, I mean, you have to understand what's going on in the world. The whole international system is collapsing and everybody's grabbing what they can grab, okay?
Right.
Not a great situation, particularly if you're a small country, but that's exactly what was going on. Stalin knew the Nazi war machine was going to be at his doorstep. It was only a matter of time, and he was padding his border. I'm not saying it was right. I'm just saying.
I agree. That's exactly what he was doing.
And you know what? The Finns, they fought heroically, and he saw it, and he was terrified of how poorly trained and prepared Soviet forces were. And he learned a lot of lessons from the Finns. Just look, you guys. The image I have of that winter war is the Finns on their skis and their white coats and all that. And then go back to December 1941. Who's going after the Germans in white garb? It's Soviets that are doing it. There's something there. There's something going on there. Okay. Stalin had a respect for him. He said, they're a small people and they fought.
Right. No, I think that's exactly right. That was indeed Stalin's calculation. He knew the Nazis were going to do this, that there was an invasion. He was just delaying the invasion, and he was securing his western borders. He could try to push the western borders as far westward as he could. But he did, as you say, he did have the respect. He respected the Finns, and at no point during the wartime negotiations did he propose bringing Finland into the Soviet Union. So even though it had been a part of the Russian Empire, there was never any plan to bring Finland into the Soviet Union, and no attempt on his part that we're going to determine the government of Finland. So basically, the Finns were just allowed to go their own way, and the only thing was, hey, don't antagonize us, don't pursue an anti-Soviet policy. So, but if the Finns are now, I mean, they still, Stoltenberg keeps talking about the Finns might now join NATO, and the Swedes might join NATO. That would be very foolish if they were to do so. I don't think they're going to do it, but that really would be a very, very stupid move on their part.
Elite capture.
Yeah.
All right, everybody. We finished with the super chats.
So we've done. But so thank you very much, everybody, for your super chats. It was very, very generous of you, and it's really been a very interesting discussion. Lots of interesting questions, lots of interesting commentary, and we will be here the same time next Saturday. And but Buddy, this is the kind of thing that Buddy's happy. He comes along. Hey, is the money rolling in? Yes. Good. Now
he knows somebody's going to say tip jar.
Exactly. And so he can be happy. So I think I can go back to sleep. Thank God.
Right.
Yeah. All right. So thank you very much, everybody. See you next Saturday. All the best. See you soon. Bye-bye.